What's happening, friends? Trumpeter Bobby Spellman here, and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Before we get into 2025 and begin our new Jazz Harmony series, I wanted to take you back in time to a couple of interviews that I did back in 2020 and 2021 for my interview series entitled Jazztopia. In the following clips, I will be talking to the great drummer Ra Kalam Bob Moses. Bob Moses grew up in New York City, and he had the opportunity to hang out with some of the great minds in jazz music. And today we're going to hear a couple of clips of him talking about hanging out with Charles Mingus and talking about hanging out with the great Eric Dolphy. If you'd like to check out more of this interview, you can find it on our YouTube channel, Jazztopia, in the link below, or you can find it as a podcast on any of the normal podcasting services that you may use, including Spotify and the like. In the future, I would like to resume this series, but things have been a little busy in the last couple of years. But if you follow the YouTube channel, the Jazztopia YouTube channel, at some point I hope to begin doing some interviews again because I really learned a lot from these, and I hope you will too. So, without further ado, here he is, Ra Kalam Bob Moses.
Theory with Bob.
Mingus used to come over too and play duets with me on the piano.
Oh, is that
when
right?
I was like 13. He lived across the park.
Oh, yeah.
My dad helped with that too because on Fifth Avenue, he was afraid they wouldn't rent to a black person in those days.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So he had my dad. Racism.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, not
That's,
why. I mean, wow. It's amazing that your parents, your father was helping.
Right. He did that. My house was kind of like a aid station for all kinds of musicians, and Mingus had huge appetites. He'd come. We used to get in those days. You'd get seltzer bottles delivered. They'd put a big wooden thing with a bunch of and syrup. And you could order. You want chocolate syrup. You want grape. You want so you make your own sodas.
Sure. Okay. Interesting.
If you want it really sweet, you put more syrup. If you want it less, more seltzer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would come, and we had these huge glasses. I don't know why. We had these giant things. They're kind of like German beer steins, but they're not. They would. And Mingus would come and make these ice cream sodas, like this much, with 4 scoops of ice cream. He'd put then he'd make chocolate or with vanilla ice cream or strawberry with orange soda. And he would down 3 or 4 of them in an afternoon.
That's crazy.
Like one of them, you would die. You'd go into diabetic shock.
I'm a diabetic. It would knock me out, man.
It would knock me out, and I'm not a diabetic. I'd have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, right.
And Mingus used to down those things.
That's amazing.
So people came over, and we had all kinds of people. Ken McIntyre came, Edgar Bateman. This is Edgar Bateman. That's where is he? Oh, he's over there. But this is a painting of Edgar Bateman and me, actually.
Huh.
Greatest drummer I ever heard. Edgar Bateman.
Let me ask you this: Mingus is such a sort of a he gets a certain reputation for being volatile or being
he was.
But he
could be.
He must have been kind to you, and
he was very kind to me, man. Very kind to me, and he. I even argued with him once, and he got a kick out of that because very few people argued with him.
Sure.
He was physically like strong, like Superman shit.
Yeah.
I saw him take a metal bar and just bend it with his hands.
Whoa. Yeah.
Like that. Rasan too, like seriously strong, like superhuman shit.
Wow.
Physically,
Sure.
So I what it was, and it was kind of funny. Looking back, he was saying to me something like, "Bobby, you gotta learn how to play sloppy, man. You don't want to wind up like one of them white studio drummers or something." Which if Mingus could see me now, he'd have no worries about that.
Yeah, sure.
I never played anything perfect in my life. I think I pretty sloppy, as it goes. But and I argued with him because I was 13 or something, and I said, "But Mingus, I don't even know how to play clean yet. You're telling me to play sloppy. I'm just a beginner, He said, "No, Bob, you're gonna learn." But he got a kick out of it that I talked back to him, and of course, later on, I knew clearly what he meant. I knew what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where if it's too clean or too correct, it doesn't sound good.
Sure.
That's why certain classical people have a hard time playing jazz music or any kind of black form, funk, R&B, African music. They have to unlearn the training.
Sure.
to do it. They can do it. Musically, there's no reason why they couldn't. They have all the technique and knowledge, you know. But yeah, they're too clean. I remember a few students I had like that who were classically trained. They played every stroke, both hands moved exactly the same, you know. No, you move hands different, you know.
Sure.
Different sounds. And anyway, I understood totally what he meant. Mingus, he was totally right about it. I just didn't get it at the time. But you know, he was very kind. I mean, he loved my father. He loved my dad, Richard Champa Lodro. And he'd come over all the time for aid and support. He used to talk like a black James Joyce. You ever try to read James Joyce? It's like so abstract that just what's he talking about? But you might sort of have an idea. That's the beauty of it. Everybody would read it and think something else, maybe have their own idea. That's how he talks spontaneously. It's like a really abstract, free form. That's why I know for a fact that the book that came out that he was supposedly wrote, somebody wrote that.
Okay.
Because it's too normal. It's too normal. His speech was not like that. I saw a few pages of the original book, and it was like James Joyce, man. It was like nobody would have understood it, man. I'm sure the publishing company said, no, we can't.
What are we going to do with this? Yeah.
We can't put this out.
Man, that's a trip.
So they got some guy to write it so it sounds like a normal person speaking, more or less, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was like that, and a great character, you know.
Sure.
But he could be tough, and he when he played live, he played one club for a whole year in the same place. Nobody who does that now.
Right.
And I used to go every Sunday, and I would sit in. It would be hardly anybody there. It would be the matinee.
Wow.
Sunday matinee. I could go on the Sunday because there was no alcohol.
Oh, is that right?
When you're underage, and I was clearly underage. I was 12 or 13 or 14, you know.
Sure.
Sunday matinee, kids could come. Well, I was the only kid there, but kids were allowed.
Huh.
And usually some point in the afternoon he would play. His steady band was Eric Dolphy, Ted Curson, Mingus, and Danny Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
But all kinds of other people would occasionally join him.
Sure.
You never knew if it was going to be just the quartet. Or I saw Booker Irvin there. I saw John Handy. I saw Jackie Byard, I think. Nico Bunick, another piano player. So different people would come in, but he would play. And he often stopped the band in the middle of a tune at a live gig. Again, who does that?
Sure.
I remember one time playing something, and he got on the trumpet player, who was great, Ted Curson, great trumpet player. He said something like, he just stopped and he said, "This is a ballad, not a blues." Okay, conceptual. You know,
sure.
He played it again. So, and you know, that kind of breaks all the normal rules of show business, which you don't show that the stuff you go through.
Right.
At the end, you don't show your warts or your mistakes, you know. But I thought, this is great. How special is this? That you get a chance to see how they work on the music and how they improve it. And even if they stop and play the same tune 3 times, you know, for me as a musician, that was better. I mean, that was like such a great lesson. And of course, they did plenty of times they played without stopping. You know, it wasn't like they stopped all the time.
Mm-hmm. There's one more person I wanted to ask you about. You knew Eric Dolphy.
Yes, loved Eric Dolphy, as a player and as a person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, one of the best people I ever met, man. I love it. He was very humble and polite, which was not necessarily the usual MO of jazz musicians in those days. A lot of them were very brash, and their faults, man. You know, they can be very aggressive sometimes, angry, pissed off. Often behave badly with women and things like that. Eric was sweet, man. He was sweet and very humble. He had a lot of self-doubt, which, you know, a lot of criticism that he got, he really took it to heart.
Yeah.
Actually, the only time I ever wrote an angry letter to Downbeat in my life was because somebody had panned Eric Dolphy. And I told them, I wrote in, "This man is a great, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is some of the best music you'll ever hear.
Mm-hmm.
The man's a master." You know.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the only time I bothered to. Now, if people write silly shit, I say, hey. You know,
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that out there.
Whatever. Well, you know,
Yeah.
They're entitled to their opinion. But he was, and he was very, you know, he took an interest in me, which, you know, it's hard for me to even comprehend that because I was just a young punk trying to learn how to play. In those days, I was trying a lot of instruments. You know, first instrument was vibes actually. First gigs I ever did was on vibes.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
Drums pretty soon because I got the drums from Shaughnessy from the one. But I played piano. I had a trumpet for a while because I got one at summer camp. I played trumpet. I played bass. Same thing at summer camp. I got to play bass, and we'd play little classical pieces with the bow. I loved that. If I had took a bass home, I would have kept playing it. But these were things. Anyway, and Dolphy was fascinated by that. Bobby, what are you playing? Vibes and trumpet and bass and drum, And I'm thinking, well, I said, but Eric, badly, I mean, I can't play any of them, but yeah, I'm messing around, And so that just that he was even interested. I also saw him play a lot with Train, and that was beautiful. I saw Eric with Mingus, and I got to play with him a few times.
Wow.
As a kid, and I had a dream. It was a few years back, but it was a beautiful dream where Eric was interacting with the me of now, the grown-up Ra Kalam.
Yeah.
And he was hearing how I play, and he was saying, "Yeah, Bobby, I like what you're doing. It's different." He said, "Yeah, I never would have thought you'd go like this. I didn't know what you'd be, but this is really good. It's different, man." He liked it, gone in my own direction, and we played in the dream like the Dolphy of old with the me of now, or of a few years back. And it was beautiful in my dream. For a while, there's a dear friend of mine, Jim Warshower, who we call him Kritavi. He buys and sells horns on eBay, saxophones. He's a saxophone player. That's how he makes his living. And he had Dolphy's old alto for quite a few years. It didn't belong to him, but someone had entrusted him to have it. So he would come over and play that horn.
Wow, isn't that something?
And invite certain players if they were of a certain level, if they wanted to use it, if he could, he'd bring it over for them. I did a duet record with Alan Chase, and Alan plays Dolphy's horn.
Yeah, I was listening to that. It's a beautiful record. Alan's amazing.
Alan is amazing, man. Player. And a couple of tunes that made the cut of the record, he played the Dolphy horn.
Wow.
And that horn had a vibe already, man. It had music already in it, man. There's no question, because people played different when they played that horn.
Sure.
And anyway, he recently made a deal to sell it to some museum in Arizona. Seemed like nice people, and they were going to take care of the horn and keep it playing too with the right people that still use it. So it went, but before it went, he decided that he wanted to record one time. So he came over, and Gyandas, my engineer, we did a duo record with Kritavi where he was only played the Dolphy alto. And it was a very funky looking horn. I mean, it wasn't clean and shiny and gold. Look, this thing had been played, because he was like trained. He was one of those guys, he played 18 hours a day.
Sure.
And it was interesting, the shape. When he played, he kind of leaned forward. He played like he had this kind of leaning forward thing. So the horn had taken on that shape.
Interesting.
And the keys of the I don't know what they're called, but the little pearl.
Keys. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. The
when your finger it meets the horn. They were worn down to almost nothing from sweat.
Yeah.
Wow. Because he had played that horn hard. But I noticed that. It's interesting. Some people, there was one young student, he was very talented. He was a friend of my ex-roommate, Armir, a good kid, man. He could play, too, saxophone player. But, some of them, they don't let the horn affect them. They just do what they already do.
Sure.
But most of the people, they get that horn, they start playing different.
Yeah.
In other words, they take what the horn gives them.
Sure.
And invariably, I would say that... when people play that horn, they play more raw, more out, and at the same time more bluesy. And that was very much Dolphy, like way out there, but really bluesy.
Yeah.
Really rooted in the down home. He was, my favorite on all his instruments: alto, bass, clarinet, flute. Best flute player I ever heard.
Amazing.
And I used to see him play bass clarinet with Train, with no mic really, and be heard over Elvin. I used to play bass clarinet a little bit, and it's a beautiful instrument, but it's not generally a loud horn.
No, you gotta.
It's kind of a subtone. I mean, you can mic it well, so it's loud, but on its own, it's not as loud as a saxophone or a trumpet for sure. he played it like great, but also loud with Elvin, and the young Elvin was bashing. The drums was loud, and I got to hear him play that. He played it with Mingus too, so I'm really glad I knew him. When I lived in that building in Central Park West, it overlooked the park, and I was on the 4th floor. Max Roach was on the 14th floor. I spent a lot of time up there too.
Mm-hmm.
Max and Abby were close with my parents. Abby kept the relationship for many years after. I look out in the park, and I could see Eric Dolphy playing flute, sitting on a rock. He would play with the birds. And you could barely hear it because it's New York street traffic and noise and cars and people. But I could just barely hear this little flute like wafting in the air. It was so magical. He looked like some genie or something, way out sitting on a rock. So I never forgot that, watching him play a flute in the park with the birds. And his ear was so attuned that he could play what the birds were singing and get them interacting with him.
That's amazing.
Because he could hear their intervals.
Yeah.
The composer Messiaen obviously studied birds, really checked them out, but he's written pieces for orchestra that sound like a flock of birds.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most organic sounding classical music I ever heard. It's
Sure.
Messiaen. But anyway, Dolphy was into that too. Yeah, a special cat. Nobody played like that, man. And
No.
like I say, very polite, very humble, really beautiful spirit. When he passed, that broke my heart. And maybe even more than Train. This was because it was something personal with Dolphy, Train, I never really talked to. I saw him a lot. He knew who I was because, he recognized me. Because one time he saw me looking into the window, the half note. He just gave me this beautiful smile, like a recognition. He said, "Yeah, that's the kid that's here every night."
Sure.
I used to go see Train every night. If he was playing 6 nights, I was there 6 nights usually. And but Dolphy, I actually got to know a little bit and talk with, and he was. I think he was in the house. He was certainly in the building a lot. Yeah. That when he passed, that broke my heart.
Yeah.
I was working a gig in the Catskills for the summer with Dave Liebman.
Okay.
And I was like 16, and when Dolphy passed, I went a little crazy. I have to say, I went kind of nuts.
Boy, what a shame.
Yeah, I don't know. It affected me very hard, man. He was too young. Train too. But
Sure.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But I did. We did meet again in the dream. In the dream
Yeah,
world, in
right.
the spirit world.
That's something.
Yeah, great cat.
Hmm.